There are moments in MotoGP that don't crackle like thunder. They rot like rust, silent, cold, slow, fatal. The day Jorge Martín activated his Aprilia exit clause wasn't a roar. It wasn't a confrontation. It wasn't even anger. It was a whisper. A whisper that sliced through a factory that had just dragged itself out of a decade of humiliation, rebuilt identity, fought Ducati punch for punch, and finally found stability through fire. And then their brand new superstar, the reigning champion, the man they trusted with the Noble 1 plate, the man they signed moments after Ducati chose Marc Marquez instead, told them they weren't good enough. A factory that saved him after 11 fractured ribs, a pneumothorax, months of hospital silence, and a season turned to ash, was told the RSGP wasn't worthy of him. What if Aprilia didn't improve? What if Bezzecchi never won those races after he lifted that clause? What if Dorna didn't block his escape? What if Honda's big money seduction had actually succeeded? What if this entire story ended with Martín abandoning the one factory that gave him a lifeline after Ducati slammed their door in his face? Because here is the truth rarely spoken out loud. If Aprilia hadn't evolved at lightning speed in mid-2025, if Bezzecchi hadn't detonated 3 wins and dragged the RSGP to the sharp edge, if the project hadn't matured faster than anyone expected, Jorge Martín would not be sitting in that garage today saying he is very happy. He would be in a different color, pretending none of this ever happened. Instead, he is here, smiling, talking about focus, pretending the storm never existed, while the factory he shook to its core pretends to forgive. But the paddock remembers, because that clause wasn't just an escape route. It was a judgment, a backstab, a statement that Aprilia wasn't worthy of the champion they signed. So the question born out of that moment, a question Aprilia's engineers still hide under their breaths, is razor sharp. Was Martín ever committed, or did he only stay because Aprilia performed without him? Comment your first reaction below. The story of Jorge Martín's 2025 isn't a tragedy, it's an implosion. The man arrived in Noale carrying the weight of betrayal. He had just been ditched by Ducati in the most brutal contract twist of the decade. Marc Marquez says Pramac not an option. Ducati panics, Martín gets dropped, Marquez gets the factory seat, and Aprilia opens its arms. A rescue, a factory seat, a fresh start, a promise of stability. And then the season ate him alive. The preseason crashes at Sepang, the return crash in Qatar with Digia, the 11 fractured ribs, the chest injuries, the forced stay in hospitals, the fear of refracture, the suffocation of irrelevance, a champion sidelined, a champion forgotten, a champion who only rode 8 races all year. But in those 8 races, he saw something horrifying. Bezzecchi rising, Bezzecchi finishing P3 in the championship, Bezzecchi winning 3 races, Bezzecchi becoming the face of Aprilia's future. And that's where the rot started. Because Jorge Martín, for all his explosive speed, has one very human weakness. He feels the walls closing in faster than they actually are. So when the RSGP didn't immediately bend to him, when his body wasn't ready, when the timing was off, he didn't wait. He didn't trust. He didn't hold the line. He did the one thing a factory fears most from a superstar. He activated an exit clause mid-season, publicly stating that Aprilia wasn't good enough. Not the team that saved him after his crash. Not the engineers who protected his privacy when he was drowning in injuries. Not the factory that stood beside him when Ducati rejected him. He broke the bond before he even rebuilt it. And the paddock saw it. Manufacturers saw it. Aprilia absolutely saw it. The insult wasn't the escape clause. Riders use those all the time. The insult was the timing. It happened while he was injured. It happened while the team was fighting for survival. It happened while Bezzecchi was lifting Aprilia by himself. It happened when the factory needed unity more than ever. Instead, the superstar they invested everything in told the world, "This bike is not enough for me." Aprilia might have forgiven him on camera, but factories don't forget. Teams do not forget. Crew chiefs do not forget. Because when a rider leaves, that's just business. But when a rider tries to leave a factory in its weakest moment, that's betrayal. Then Dorna intervened, blocked the exit, stopped the move to Honda, forced Martín back into the garage he tried to escape. And what waited for him? A weapon, a monster. An RSGP sharper than anything Aprilia ever built, a project suddenly alive, a teammate suddenly winning, a factory suddenly elite. The situation flipped faster than he expected. Aprilia was no longer the underdog. Aprilia was becoming Ducati's only threat. And now Martín was stuck in a team that no longer needed him, but still owned him. So the question now becomes, was it focus or arrogance that lit the fuse of this entire mess? This is where the story gets uncomfortable, because Jorge Martín didn't just activate an exit clause. He detonated a psychological bomb inside his own garage. He destroyed the trust chain. He destabilized Aprilia's project. He embarrassed the factory publicly. He chose escape over leadership. He forced Dorna to intervene. He created political chaos. He made engineers question if he believed in them at all. The irony? Aprilia protected him during his darkest year. They hid the extent of his injuries. They covered the medical chaos. They waited for him. They supported him emotionally. They gave him space. They gave him privacy. He repaid them by declaring their bike inferior. And here's the part no rider wants to hear. Martín says he is very happy now because Aprilia started performing without him. Think about the psychology of that. He didn't apologize. He didn't retract the clause. He didn't admit the timing was a mistake. He didn't acknowledge the damage he caused. He simply said he's happy because the project is good. Imagine telling the team that carried you through injuries, "I'm happy now that you got better." Cold truth. A factory remembers who rode with them during the storm. A factory remembers who abandoned them during the storm. And Aprilia will never forget who trusted them first. That rider was Marco Bezzecchi, not Jorge Martín. The consequences of Martín's clause will haunt his 2026 seat negotiations. Why? Because Aprilia is now the second best bike on the grid, maybe even equal to Ducati depending on track. It has power, it has braking stability, it has traction, it has corner entry dominance, it has aero superiority. He isn't auditioning Aprilia anymore. He is auditioning for Aprilia, because for the first time since Noale returned in 2016, the RSGP doesn't need validation. It doesn't need excuses. It doesn't need praise. It needs a rider who trusts it in the dark. And if Martín wants to be that rider, 2026 becomes his final exam. Was this gravity pulling Martín down, or the price he pays for doubting the one factory that believed in him? Let's cut the sugar. Let's cut the par lines. Let's cut the diplomacy. Here is the truth. Jorge Martín made things worse for himself. He wounded Aprilia's pride. He destabilized the garage. He questioned the project at the exact moment it needed unity. And now he needs to convince them he deserves the seat he nearly abandoned. Aprilia knows 2026 is a contract-critical season. They know the market is exploding for 2027. They know factories like Honda and Ducati might reshuffle riders like chess pieces. They know the new regulations will change the entire power map. Aprilia is no longer begging for riders. Aprilia is choosing them. And in that world, Martín is not guaranteed anything. He must prove three things. Commitment, not just speed. Commitment to the factory he nearly walked out on. Leadership, not panic under pressure. Not exit clauses when the skies get dark. Real leadership. Loyalty, because Aprilia knows loyalty is rare. Bezzecchi gave it. Aldeguer could give it. Pecco might give it in 2027. Martín has not given it yet. If he fails, Aprilia will not hesitate. They are now a top factory. They can attract top names. They can sign someone who fits the RSGP like a blade. And the paddock knows exactly what might happen. Aprilia might get someone hot in the market, someone fearless, someone loyal, someone who doesn't activate exit clauses mid-season. Martín says he is very happy, good, but the RSGP isn't the one that needs to convince anyone. The bike is already a threat, already complete, already the only machine making Ducati nervous. The only rider now under evaluation is him. From now, where does this put Martín? The time will tell us. Comment below. Subscribe for more savage breakdowns.